All of us wish that we were doing this in person.
Mhm.
There's great advantage of sitting across the table, and we know what is, and we're going to make the best of it. I also think that what we're doing here probably is an example of the very kind of thing that we're urging and talking about that we would do with our students. And so I want to say thank you, all of you, for participating in this particular moment in time. And I know on our campus, we always have a tradition, I know many of you do as well, to have a short word of prayer. So let me just say a short word of prayer. Father, bless this session. May what we share be useful for your kingdom building and for the goodness and the betterment of our students. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Well, it's my privilege to introduce the primary speaker in this particular webinar. And Tiffany Snyder, I knew her as a student when she was at Indiana Wesleyan. She graduated in 2013. And she was a wonderful student, served on the student council, but since that time, she's worked very hard and applied herself. And she's currently the Assistant Director of Faculty Enrichment in the Center of Learning and Innovation here at Indiana Wesleyan University. And her primary role is to train and support faculty to explore innovative teaching methods and technologies for their online courses. And she hosts a number of podcasts and has been very successful in that. And most recently, last week, defended her dissertation and is now Dr. Snyder. And her dissertation was on this very topic of online work. The topic of synchronicity is a term that I think that she coined and is used in her dissertation. And we're hoping we'll use it to talk broadly about what we want to share with you today. So I'm going to give this over to Tiffany to lead us and show us some of the slides that she has. And then a little later on, I'll return and give a couple of experiences that I have in teaching in a synchronicity way in an asynchronous world. Tiffany?
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me. This is my first time being a part of this group, and it's a little intimidating for my first time to be presenting and not just listening and taking it in, but I'm very anxious to share this message with you and hopeful that I can learn from you in the future. Synchronicity is a term that was coined by Indiana Wesleyan University. Now, some of you may know it's also the name of an album. I won't even tell you which band that is, but synchronicity may have additional meanings, but for our sake, it's describing those synchronous activities that can happen in our otherwise asynchronous online courses. So that's what we're going to dive into. The outline for the discussion today is I just want to briefly touch on the research, why we studied this, and how we came to the conclusions that we did. The second thing is the outcomes. What did we learn from the synchronicity efforts at Indiana Wesleyan University? The third thing is inviting Henry back to share a faculty perspective. He has dabbled in synchronous activities in otherwise asynchronous online courses and has had a great impact on students and positive feedback from them. We're going to share some takeaways that you can put into practice right away, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions. But first, again, to reiterate, what is synchronicity when we're talking about synchronicity? And that is, synchronicity is the option for all students to have at least one optional synchronous session in their otherwise asynchronous course. So at Indiana Wesleyan University, we have a traditional campus where students have fully synchronous on-site learning experiences. And then we have our online courses that are designed to be asynchronous, and students are never required to meet in real time. In fact, we sell it on that it's flexible and that they'll never be required to meet in real time. But at one point or another, the university started to think, what can we do to stay ahead of the curve? We need to move with the technologies that are available to us. We need to move with the way that higher education is going. And perhaps it doesn't have to be one or the other, synchronous or asynchronous. And so last year, actually 2019, the institution started considering a new model of learning. And they didn't want to completely throw out the window the other two models that are operating, but to say, is there some kind of middle ground that we could offer students without changing a lot? And the outcome of that was synchronicity. So what if our online programs could be completely asynchronous? We're still not requiring students to meet in real time, but we are giving them that option because we believe that students and faculty want and need to connect with each other, to ask questions live, and that technology is available. This was all before COVID and before Zoom became so prevalent, but actually COVID and the prevalence of Zoom has assisted with this effort because our faculty are more and more, and students are more aware of how to use synchronous tools, and they're used to it and they need it. So this is a blended learning modality that is not forced upon students or faculty, but it is something that we believe in, and we hope that all faculty and students will take advantage of if they choose. The way the research came together, the Center for Learning and Innovation at Indiana Wesleyan put an email out, and we invited all full-time faculty to sign up to be a part of a professional learning community. Your very own Dr. Frank Ponce, who's in the call today, was one of them that signed up to be a part of this professional learning community. When we opened it up, approximately 20 faculty signed up to join, to research this thing called Synchronicity. 16 persisted just because of time, 4 dropped out, but it was an absolute blessing to us that the 16 faculty represented different areas of the institution. So it was truly cross-disciplinary. And in hindsight, that was one of the best things that could have happened, was having a cross-disciplinary group. The group met from January to June every other week. And the first 3 months, they met to talk about the literature. What are other institutions trying? What have they tried? Some of them have already experienced or experimented with synchronous online sessions, even just a welcome session that they would invite students to over Zoom to say, hi, this is my course. What's your name? That everyone could see each other and interact. They'd record it and upload it into our LMS later on. So some had dabbled, some were interested in dabbling in synchronous sessions, and others just wanted to be involved in a professional learning community. So again, the first 3 months was a research and brainstorming kind of interaction. And the second 3 months of the professional learning community was when they actually conducted research. So in most cases, these faculty that were a part of the professional learning community taught multiple sections of the same course. And when that was the case, they would teach one section with no synchronous offerings, all asynchronous as the course was designed. They would teach the other section of that same course with at least one synchronous component, an optional synchronous discussion, an optional synchronous welcome session, optional synchronous office hours. There were about 6 different options that faculty toyed with. Then we had a survey that we sent out, and we were measuring 9 different items, student learning outcomes on that survey. And the item that came back statistically significant was connectedness with the instructor. And that was not surprising to us, but it was great to have the data there. And it's probably not surprising to you either that students that had a synchronous option in their otherwise asynchronous online course were reporting that they felt connected with their instructor. And we got some powerful testimonials from that. But these students were feeling connected with their instructor and their peers. And so we really were leaning in to that finding. In a case where a faculty member did not teach multiple sections of the same course, we did a qualitative study, and we called those students whether or not they had actually participated in the optional synchronous activity, and we asked them what they thought about it. The response was completely overwhelming, more than we expected. Even students that didn't attend the synchronous offering would say things like, wow, I've been in a program for 4 years and I've never had the opportunity presented to me to meet with a faculty member in real time, to see their face, to hear their voice. They were overwhelmed that they even had the option. So even if they couldn't make it in that course because of a family commitment, because many of them are adult learners, they're busy, that's why we designed courses asynchronous in the first place. But when they were given the option to engage synchronously, they were so excited and appreciative, and we have quite the database now of these student responses to work with. I also want to mention that such a case was built around synchronicity, with the outcomes being overwhelming, that the university was growing excited. And you'll see in just a few slides how the university really embraced this idea and then made it a campus-wide initiative. So as Henry mentioned, it just so happened, it was by chance that the synchronicity effort completely coincided with my doctoral research, which was on feedback practices in online education. And the way that it came together was that connectedness piece. So my dissertation is on immediacy, or the perceived closeness between the faculty member and the student when they're divided by the wall of a computer screen or a phone or an iPad. And what practices faculty can put into place to really establish social presence and connect and lessen that perceived distance between themselves and students. And these synchronous sessions were proving to be one way that that could be possible. So the literature support was there. There's also literature to support that when faculty members and students can see each other, even the slip-ups. So we know that Zoom's not perfect. There's things that are distracting. You're learning a little bit about my home right now. I'm sure in a few minutes I'll slip up too, and there'll be, some humor around that. But when a person comes across as human and authentic, it just adds that element that we're all lacking when we engage with technology all the time. And the technology is there, so why not lean into it and use tools like Zoom, or even ones that don't have video, Microsoft Teams, or whatever, Google Meet, whatever it is, to engage with each other in real time and allow for some of those authentic interactions to happen. Here's a student testimonial. Again, we have many of them, but here's what a student had to say about their response to having just one optional synchronous session in an online course. It says, having a real-time meeting with the class gave me a chance to speak to classmates that I had been learning with for over a year. Being able to see the professor and interact with him or her, as well as other students, makes the learning stick more. So most times these optional synchronous sessions that our faculty were offering were recorded and provided for students that couldn't be there, because again, they're optional and we didn't want to leave anybody out. So we'd make the recordings available. Well, that also is showing that it was helping with student learning, because students could go back to a given discussion, let's say an optional discussion, time and time again to review whatever it was that they needed to review. And that helps the content stick. And then also, wow, those testimonials about students who had been in a program for 4 years and had never seen or heard the voice of another student or their instructor, yikes. And it doesn't have to be that way. So perhaps they only signed up for online education because they're busy and they lead that adult lifestyle where they're working and have a family and they think they need a flexible opportunity. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean they want to sacrifice all the relational connectedness that can come from those real-time interactions. So the testimonials are excellent. I mentioned earlier that the university really took hold of this, and they did more than we imagined. So as we wrapped up research in June 2020, the university invited us to come speak before the cabinet and ask how it was going. We shared how it was going in 20 minutes or so. And actually the cabinet came back with, what if all the deans hear about this, and if they're on board, we delivered a campus-wide faculty training opportunity. And that's exactly what we did. So the best part was the professional learning community that met for 6 months, they had done the research. They reviewed the literature, they put together an annotated bibliography, they tried these practices in their courses. We took everything we learned from these 16 faculty members and we put it into 3 formats. The 3 formats were done because Indiana Wesleyan has faculty members who are local in Marion, Indiana, but we also have faculty across the globe. And so we wanted to cater to the different faculty types. So we turned the synchronicity training into an asynchronous online training, which was a mini course on our LMS, where faculty could complete the mini course and earn a digital badge. We also had synchronous online training in 1-hour webinar offerings. So they were an hour and a half apiece, which is the longest webinars that we do in the Center for Learning Innovation. But we offered them every Tuesday afternoon and evening in the month of November to cater to those adjunct faculty schedules. And then there was a synchronous on-site training option. Because Indiana Wesleyan has regional education centers, we actually traveled out when COVID permitted, masks included, to offer on-site training because some of our faculty just really appreciated those on-site training options. So these were the 3 training options that were available to faculty, and our deans got on board, and actually it was required of all full-time and adjunct faculty this past fall, which was just excellent. This was a huge celebration for the Center for Learning and Innovation. It's not to say that the university expected all faculty at the institution to just start adding on synchronous sessions in their classes. Our K through 12 friends, when COVID happened, they were forced to kind of move into this place of doing it all, having these synchronous online sessions. They were on site in their classrooms. They're forced to juggle and do everything. That was not our intention with this. We were taking courses that were designed to be online and asking faculty and training faculty to go back, look at the learning outcomes for their course and say, what content could best be taught in real time and then recorded for those that can't make it? Or what am I missing in this course? It's connectedness with students. What if I had a synchronous welcome session to kick this off? How could that change the course? So we were asking faculty to go back and examine how they could enrich their online course with just one even synchronous option for students. So we didn't want to make it, now we need you to do all of these things. We just asked and invited them to offer one thing for their students. This is where I want to transition. I have the privilege of welcoming Henry to speak, and he has been at Indiana Wesleyan for over 15 years and he was a former president, and I was a student, as he mentioned, under his presidency. We shook hands on my graduation day, which is just too cool. I would have never dreamed that we'd be here together in this venue, so it's exciting to me. For the past 5 years, he's been teaching, and he's been chair of the communications department for IW National and Global. The first day that I started my job, he doesn't even know this, the first day I started my position in the Center for Learning Innovation, one of my questions to my supervisor was, who were the faculty champions? And his name was the first name that they told me. You need to connect with Henry Smith. And I said, the president, Henry Smith? And he said, yes, the president, Henry Smith. He's a very good faculty member. He's our strongest. And so that was exciting for me. I was timid at first, but I'm glad we eventually connected. And he's gonna share how long before Synchronicity was formalized, he was experimenting with some of these real-time interactions and offerings for his students. So, Henry.
Thank you for your remarks. It humbles me. You know, I would just say right back at you, to see students like yourself continue to grow and develop and follow God's calling is just one of the greatest joys that a faculty member or anyone in higher education can have. So thank you. When I finished my presidency, Frank Ponce and I were talking about what maybe might be next for me to do. I was living in northern Indianapolis, about an hour from the campus, and I wanted to return to what I've often said was my first love, and that was teaching. I really didn't intend to end up being an administrator, but God had other plans. And so returning to my teaching was important. But I can tell you that I was terrified about returning to the classroom because I had not done it for quite some time. But I was shepherded by people like Frank Ponce, who sat down with me at McDonald's and walked me through the online activities and what could be done, and shared with me things that could actually make my teaching stronger. And I took it very seriously. I really loved the students. But the idea of synchronicity or connecting with students was something that kind of came out first about 3 years ago for a class I teach. My discipline is communication. I have the PhD from Ohio State University in communication. And one of my areas of interest is small group communication. And I teach a class in small group communication online. And those students, I have them actually do research on how groups work together virtually. There's a whole lot of different platforms that can be used, and they research that and they try it out and they experience it. And then we have some readings and so forth. And this was done several years ago, and started realizing what that did for the class in terms of seeing one another and working with one another. Now we know that most classes hate group work. But this particular class, I said, you're studying groups, so you need to participate in that and don't fall into the trap of error that many students do. So when Synchronicity started coming along, it was something that really piqued my interest. And I confess that I am not the leading person on our campus to talk about synchronicity. These faculty that did it a year ago, they have all kinds of different methods of doing it. So I'm really talking to you about it based on fairly limited activity. What I found as it's important to take a baby step if you've not done it yet and try it. Because you'll be surprised. Now, some of you, I'm not assuming that some of you on this webinar, I'm assuming that many of you probably already do this in some form, and in our discussion session coming up in a few minutes, hopefully we can learn from one another. But mine has been pretty simple. I find that the very first night of classes start on Tuesday morning, if I hold that session that night as optional, they're much more likely to join it, and then I record it, and then they can view it. That is legal in terms of with regard to FERPA and so forth. And then I have many students who can't be there, but then will view it as well. And to put a face with me is helpful. But what I also find, and this is not just in the small group class, this is in some other classes I teach, they start connecting with one another in ways that are really unique. And so this really has the potential, I think, to add another modality to our online experience that can be really fantastic. And so I would just say that if you've not done it, try it. Matter of fact, I find that when I do it, sometimes students in the class know more about, we use Zoom because it's part of our Brightspace, know more about it than I do. Matter of fact, I had a Zoom class recently, had some problems, and a student who was in Florida walked me through some things that I wasn't doing quite right. And so I would say try it. The second thing I would say to you is spend the time, and if you don't already, if you use Zoom, or there's others that can be used, of course, but try your best to learn more and more about how to be effective with it. There can be snafus, but the more knowledgeable you are the better. So I would just say, on our campus, we have some people that are doing some fantastic things, and I'm sure you are too. And so I would just like to just stop by saying I'm not an expert, but I'm certainly a strong supporter of this. And maybe we can open it up for you to share some of either your questions, or maybe we can start by asking, do you have experiences that you would like to share, testimonials that are relevant to our discussion? And so who would like to be first just to talk about your experiences? Anyone? Tiffany, I wonder if we take our slide down, we'll be more likely to see everybody, or shows my ignorance of technology. There we go. I see more of you. Okay. You know, I know there's protocols in terms of who should speak and so forth, but I would just say, who would like to be first to share? Anyone?
I'll go first, Henry.
Okay,
sure,
please.
I'll go first.
Frank?
Hey, I just want to say that it's awesome to have this presentation sort of summarizing the work that the learning community did at Indiana Wesleyan. This is one of the things that we're, you know, the benefit of we work better together. But I just want to point your attention to the three handouts that are in the chat. Those are really important documents, and they're in infographic format, and they're really short synopsis of ideas that you can even take and flesh out. We've just given you the good presenters have given you categories from which you can build. So you should grab those documents. But I want to point you to the Synchronicity activities.pdf if you have a chance to take a look at that. The one that I use the most we use Zoom now for student presentations and the practicing of professional oral communication in a group and team context. That's huge. Zoom has given us capacity to do that. Second thing is the next to last one, tutorials for complex tasks or assignments. Personally, in my humanities and fine arts courses, this is where I get the best synchronous interaction with my students. When students have questions, when they're behind, when they haven't submitted, they know from the outset of the course that I'm available on demand, scheduled basis to do a Zoom session with them. And like Henry said, the fact that they just know that comes up in the end of course faculty evaluations. The fact that they just know that they can get a Zoom session with a faculty member is a big value add to them. But that's where I have the most one-on-one and one-to-few synchronous interaction with my students in the course that I teach. And that kind of goes hand in glove with the last one, which is tutoring. Underdeveloped students have greater and lesser experiences in the courses that you teach. They need supplemental instruction. And when you can add this personal touch, this personal touch is very important, and help explain for them and extend their awareness of the material that's in the particular learning activity or the assessment that's required. It's a huge difference-making value add. It might make the difference in whether a student will make the decision to persist and continue in their program. It's just that critical. Your availability and your ability to use these tools to interact. It builds relational dimensions to your work. It's huge for the student. You make memories with these individuals that you see for a very short period of time that could make or break the difference in them moving forward. So thank you guys. This is a pertinent topic. That's how I use it. Be interested to hear what you use.
Well, I have tried, I teach doctoral level research design online. So you would think that people would come to sessions, but I have tried being available, every Sunday night or different nights of the week. And I found that very few people came. What I have switched to is connecting my calendar with Calendly, where they can look at my calendar and schedule themselves at any time they want. And I have the range of some don't do any and some do 5 sessions per week. That's a bit much, but it seems that immediacy of what you're talking about, when I need the person, I can get it. And the other thing is with COVID, I've switched from doing all phone calls to allowing them to make team meetings, and that the majority of my students want to do those video calls. I would say there's a certain demographic that never wants to do the video calls, but the majority of students like that face-to-face. So I think it aligns with what you're talking about with immediacy, but maybe not synchronicity. So what do you see as that being aligned with what you're talking about?
I so appreciate you sharing those examples. When we did the trainings in the fall, that is the kind of feedback that we would receive. So we have some faculty members like Frank who are seeing success. We also have some faculty members, not like yourself necessarily, who have tried once and didn't have a great student turnout and are just completely discouraged. And then we have some like you, Heidi, who have tried and tried again, tried a different way, and eventually do land in a place where it works for their students. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. So I think you're doing exactly what you can and should do by trying and trying again, just asking your students, why aren't you attending this? Because you teach research methods, you are right. Technically, the Synchronicity group would say, oh, you're the prime faculty, the prime candidate to offer these sessions because it's a complex subject that many learners are going to benefit from being there in real time and asking questions in real time. But I like that you've adapted. I think that's great.
And of course, we all know that telephone is also synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I frequently use telephone calls. I have a couple of ladies who do not want to do telephone calls because they don't want to give their number out, but they're willing to go through our Brightspace and utilize Zoom. So that's another alternative. Something that I've found, I've had the situations where I've sat there for a half hour and no one's shown up, and that is discouraging. I have a couple of classes that are complex enough in what is required that I really start urging the students early on that this is very important that either they come or they watch it, because they'll get tripped up on some of the intricacies of the course. Now, not all the courses are that way, but some are. And so I find that is where I have the most success. I also find that there's more success if they're really new to the program. If they've been doing this for a year or so, they often think they know one another. But if they're fairly new for a 100 level course, they seem to be more eager to do it. And it's unpredictable, but the fact that you try, I think, is what is important.
I'll share just an experience I've had, because I've had the same experience where when you offer the option to meet in a synchronous format that, students like come to my office for office hours and nobody ever shows. So I look for those opportunities to kind of funnel students, into those meetings. And typically, as Henry was saying, it's if you find those places in the class that are more challenging for students, then that becomes a point where they're going to need they're actually looking for a little bit higher level of support and engagement, whether that's a major research project or presentation, or in some of my undergrad classes, it's just midterm and final time. So I'm able to offer a study session. And in those times, I communicate to students that my expectation is that if they're able, they will attend. And I've started using the calendar function out of our LMS so that they can sign up for the sessions. I will post several different options at different times of the day so that it's available. But I say everybody should either sign up or they should communicate with me. And in some cases, I've scheduled a specific session just to meet with individual students briefly. But it gives me a touch point with those students. And then what I use those sessions for is I'm not presenting content in those sessions. I'm giving examples, I'm giving clarification, and I take the opportunity in those live sessions to have a human connection with the students. I always take the opportunity at that point to pray with the students while I have them in a live call. and just communicate that I'm there for them and that I'm available to them. And again, all I'm trying to do is demonstrate that social presence and help build that relational bridge with the students.
Thanks, Mark. I think our faculty in the fall during training were a bit, well, they were more open-minded to doing this than I thought because of COVID and because of the familiarity with Zoom. But I think they were a bit surprised perhaps that it does require some promotion. So it's not enough to just in the LMS to say, you can participate in week 4 in a live discussion or a text-based discussion, either one. I'm allowing you that opportunity, period. There does have to be some marketing and some telling, explicitly stating why it's important. Something like, in week 4, my students typically struggle. They really struggle with this assignment. However, the students that make it are the students that attend this live session, that ask their questions, that connect with one another. We're going to have the poll feature running, maybe some breakout rooms running, or maybe none of that if that all seems just too much. But it's telling them exactly why, and that's going to make them want to choose one path or the other. Now, I don't want to end up like those students that you're saying struggle in week 4. I want to end up like the other students that are making it because they showed up to the session. So not scaring them by any means, but being very clear about what they're going to benefit by attending that live session. So it is a carefully placed optional synchronous opportunity and marketed, heavily marketed.
Tiffany, hi, this is Kim Priestmeyer from Belhaven. First of all, thank you for a great webinar. I think this is really important, and a couple of things about that you've added to my kind of just toolbox for helping faculty blend in some synchronous opportunities. You know, we require 2 office hours per week, and we get the same, you know, I get a lot of the same feedback. Oh, I sit there, nobody shows up. But one thing that I think that you're doing right, that I'm not doing, that I'm going to start course correcting on a bit, is giving faculty a kind of some choices on how they want to add synchronous opportunities in. And I also love the idea of the week 1 as opposed to office hours, which can get a bit nebulous, and, you know, it just doesn't, you know, so thanks for holding this and giving me some new ways of thinking about it. And we completely support the idea of adding in some synchronous opportunities into a so-called asynchronous course, because as you said, the research supports the engagement and the feelings that students have about the intimacy level between students and faculty that a lot of times is really absent. So you're doing great work, and this was a great opportunity. Thanks.
Tiffany, don't we have some programs that market themselves as having a required synchronicity opportunity, which is different than our norm? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, that's a perfect segue. We have one ultimate success story, kind of like the ideal, and we can't take credit for it. So they were already doing it before Synchronicity Research, but they're a great example for us. Our School of Educational Leadership, they embrace this as an entire program. And the benefit of that is they can market it from the point of marketing a program. So what they did is they said, we believe in this. We believe there's a niche in the market of marketing programs, or education programs, I'm sorry, that other education programs aren't promoting these real-time synchronous sessions, the connectedness with the instructor if the program's online. So they are actually selling it to students, prospective students, and saying, if you sign up for our School of Educational Leadership, in every single course they're saying you will have an optional opportunity to engage synchronously. And that's a big deal. And they started doing that. And back to what Kim shared about office hours, I have seen the course design of those School of Educational Leadership courses. And theirs is neat because from a course design perspective, they're designing their courses around this idea. Can you imagine having it from the instructional designer level all the way through? Training faculty, delivery, everything. It's just masterful. But when it comes to office hours, what they do is they've shared with me that they think that students would engage in office hours more if there was some kind of agenda or subject that it's intimidating for some students to just log into Zoom and wonder what does that feel like? Is my instructor just sitting there looking at the camera and I'm going to log on and be expected to say something? Or just the unknown, it's just too much unknown and perhaps too overwhelming. So within each workshop or module of their courses, the office hours are reposted with an agenda that says, this week, here are the 4 things that you can bring and more to office hours. Here's what I'm prepared to coach you on. Kind of like coaching topics. And then in the next workshop module, it says, here's the 4 things that I will coach you on in my office hours this week. And the next module. And every time the link to access that Zoom, those office hours, the directions, expectations are reposted. And they're always there in the student's face to see clearly. And I just thought that was really neat. I'd never seen it laid out that way. I've seen it as an announcement or in a syllabus. Here's my office hours and the instructions, but never designed in that kind of format. So that would be perhaps another way, Kim, I think, to try to improve the office hour experience.
One thing I really want to encourage, that is to find ways to, if you believe in this, and I think many of you already do, to find ways to incorporate it in the culture of your own learning communities and to share with others. And that's one thing that I'm so excited that Tiffany and others have done. I attended, I think, the webinar, and then I also did the online class. And some of the, I think there's a Zoom session recorded where 4 experienced faculty talk for around 10-15 minutes about all the variety of things that they do in class. And I had not even thought of several of those before. And so you really learn from one another in terms of the variety of things. It's not just welcome evenings, or it's not just office hours, but there's a multitude of ways to do discussions and on and on. So your creativity can continue to grow, and it can be a real positive thing. Anyone else want to share any experience, or if you have a question at all about the research or what we're doing or anything? This is your opportunity.
Quite a bit about the students' relationship with faculty and about their success in the class from a grading or success perspective. I'm interested in more information about the relationship with other students and that community aspect that would have been brought out because they were available in a setting together, because it does, as I was describing, I'm widely available, but there's no opportunity that I have yet figured out how to get people to listen to each other. And even for me to be able to help critique a research design while another student's listening, I'd love to do some of that aspect. So if you could talk a little bit about that community and learning together that you've learned.
Do you have any research?
Frank, I was going to say, I think Frank and Henry probably
mine's
have done this.
Mine's just anecdotal. And I think actually just what I've heard from students. So I don't know if, Frank, if you've done that and received, has there been any research done on that? So mine's just a few students have said to me, it's really great to connect with someone else that I've worked with and posted with on discussions, but for the first time got to see them, and we're communicating more together now. And certainly it makes a difference for the small group class, because being able to do that synchronously to prepare for the very issue they're studying is helpful. But that's probably all I could add. I don't know if Frank or Tiffany, if you have any more. That's a great question, Heidi.
Let me jump in here and just simply say that I'm going to submit a proposal for a presentation at this summer's June CAHEA conference. And Renee, if you have something where you can throw those dates up there, I'd say the June 14th through 17th. Is that correct? June 14th, is that right, Mark? June 14th through 17th. Okay. Where we've tumbled onto a very, very elegant way to use Zoom for group presentations, and we've systematized it. And we embedded it in a retrofit of our ministry leadership program, which is going to create technocentric pastors, okay? The pastors are going to be proficient with technology and know how to leverage that to accomplish God's kingdom purposes in churches at the local level. Of course, one of those essential skills for pastors is teamwork, right? So So we've taken some of the literature on teamwork, and we've been able to create some interactions that involve teamwork, involve group presenting, and involve peer review and peer feedback, formative and summative. And so so there are some amazing things that you can do that sort of grown out of the agility and elegance of Zoom in its present form, its capacity to produce high quality recordings when configured right, that is going to revolutionize our ministry education courses and really equip pastors for the 21st century in a way that I don't know that anybody else is doing quite in this way. And so I could not be more excited about that. And I'll have more information about group presentations, teamwork in an online asynchronous course using synchronous tools in our June CAHEA conference. So you won't want to miss the June conference that will extend this conversation there.
And as I said earlier, I teach communication courses, and I will confess that I've just touched the surface of what can be done. Frank is ahead of me. He's more of a technocrat than I am. And I really admire, he paves the way, if you will. So I want to do more in terms of presentations, and I'm not doing all that I could do. And I'm a little, not embarrassed, but I wish I was doing more, and I plan to do that. So if we're inspired here, maybe that's a lot of what we do by being together.
And don't be overwhelmed. What one thing can you do? What one thing can you do that you're not doing now? Don't do anything more than just one thing, and then think about the next thing next year. Okay, but one thing at a time, one step at a time, you can get a lot done.
With that one thing in mind, often our faculty in the professional learning community, we're choosing a welcome session. And I know that Henry does those as well. So the optional welcome session. That one isn't so much a learning objective as it is to set a culture or a tone for the whole rest of the course. So it may be that on your end of course, I've heard this, on an end of course survey, you hear that you hear something about the way that you grade that makes it sound like you don't care, or you know, that your personality even, or your tone is not how you intended for it to come across, but it's an asynchronous course, and you know, you're grading APA and you sound a certain way. And so that one time optional synchronous session where maybe only 2 people show up to the welcome, but then you're uploading it, the recording, and making it available for others to watch. Maybe you're not seeing the results of it right away, but it could just be that they got to see that you're a kind person, and they'll hear you say that you want to be there. You could even be honest and say, I tend to have a reputation of being this kind of grader, but just know that I want to help you. I want to see you succeed. Taking the opportunity to communicate a certain kind of message because it sets a tone for the whole rest of the course. That's a very common first step that people will take that really is low pressure, and it doesn't matter how many come. It could just be to get you comfortable using Zoom and doing synchronous sessions in the asynchronous course, but that's a great one. And I haven't mentioned end of course surveys yet, and it's probably not a very good motivator or reason to do synchronous sessions, but I have yet to hear from any faculty member who have started incorporating optional synchronous sessions and have not seen some improvements or an uptick in positive statements on their end of course surveys. And in some cases we laugh because the students didn't even attend. Sometimes the students that speak up and appreciate these sessions couldn't even make it, but they have this feeling or this attitude about their instructor and that offering that makes a difference. So that's pretty neat. Again, probably shouldn't be your primary motivation, but I think it's a pretty neat outcome.
Well,
it's a pretty handy artifact to have during review, though.
Yeah, but we don't like to admit that as instructors, but I will tell you that after many years being out of the classroom, I was terrified by the student evaluations coming my way. And then I suddenly remembered my callous attitude when others got it. I also did a little bit of study on the EOCs on whether or not I gave easy grades and it correlated with good scores. And there was no correlation whatsoever. I did it over 3 years. And some of the classes that I gave some really pretty tough grades, I got good reviews because I think it was because I tried to show that I cared and was active and participated in their engagement. So that made a big difference.
One thing that I've just thought of as you're talking, Tiffany, is I have people who are finishing the 16 weeks with me write notes to the people who are starting. But what if I do a welcome session and I invite a couple of people and say, you can come to this and listen to people who just finished it? That's a great thing that I'm going to try next time around.
That's excellent. I hadn't thought of that. We have one of the options, and again, there's those, if you haven't accessed them, there's a couple of resources in the chat. One of them is group panelists or industry leaders. So sometimes especially our adjuncts, they're out there working in industry, they have full-time jobs, and they maybe come across somebody who they're excited that they could invite into their course and into a Zoom session and have students ask questions. Now it's tricky because it's an optional thing. And so what if you invite this guest in and only 2 students show? Yes, it's recorded, but it's not the perfect scenario. We don't have all the bugs worked out, but it is an option. And I hadn't considered, Heidi, what you suggested, which I think would be so motivating. I mean, me coming off of a doctoral program, if I had an opportunity entering my first doctoral course to have, yes, my chair there, but perhaps a couple people who just graduated, oh, that would be such a rich experience to ask them some pretty, raw, vulnerable questions about what it really feels like to come off of that, that learning opportunity. Yeah.
If I could share just a couple ideas. I have one of our teachers who had paired students up for a particular assignment. They were supposed to do a debate, and the assignment involved the students scheduling a live Zoom call with one another, recording that session, and then that was the artifact that they submitted for the assignment. So it gave the students an opportunity to interact with one another in a live meeting, but they scheduled it on their own. It was just you can use a free Zoom account for that. You don't even need to sign up for anything, but they were able to record the session, submit that, and then you get so there's the benefit of them interacting with one another, and then also, the teacher has the artifact from that, is able to give that a group assignment. So that's a great option. As you think about this, it's not just the teacher connecting, but finding creative ways to facilitate maybe some group presentations using Zoom. Maybe it's not everybody presenting at the same time, but maybe you've got groups of students who are doing their presentation in a Zoom format, and then they're sharing that video for the other classes to peer review or something like that. There's a lot of variables there that you can use to create some opportunities for students to connect with one another in a real-time setting. The other thing I wanted to mention was just the reality that Zoom has changed a lot in the last year. So if you guys have been tracking with this, there's been a lot of updates to that. We also use Microsoft Teams at our campus. That is a tool that has really been redesigned almost entirely from where it was a year ago. And my anticipation is that these tools will continue to evolve. Zoom is at the top of the pack right now. It may not always be there. You can think back to the days of when everything was WebEx or GoToMeeting, and now you hardly even hear about those tools anymore. It's a reality that these tools will continue to change and evolve. And what I know, I think coming out of the pandemic is that synchronous meetings are here to stay, and they're going to be more incorporated even to what we think about it like traditional blended learning opportunities for synchronous remote attendance and participation. But the point I wanted to make was that with the changing of the tools, I would listen to a podcast out of the University of Central Florida. They have a teaching online podcast, and they've been talking about these platforms that they are meeting platforms. We are using meeting platforms for teaching. But what's interesting is that the newer platforms that are going to be coming out, and the way these are changing, is that there will be teaching platforms, synchronous teaching platforms that are where assessment can be done in real time. And it's exciting to think about, as these tools continue to change, what new functionality will be there that will enable us not just to meet with students, but to do assessment, to actually be able to collect assignments, to be able to give feedback, and have that all integrated into what happens, in a learning management system or, something like that. So then it's not just meeting. It becomes part of you're assessing their skills or presentation style or something else. And that's then integrated right into what we're doing as part of the assessment for the course.
I'm teaching small group communication right now, and I have 5 groups over the next couple of weeks that are actually going to be looking at what is the latest and make an assessment and which one of these are the best virtual groups. It's really interesting to see their analyses. And also, I leave this session and I'm going to be on a team session with someone in Chicago. So we really are learning And this is becoming really part of our culture. And I think that, as you all have said so very, very well, the COVID is actually, most things about the COVID are not good, but this has forced us into another option, which I think has become part of our culture. So, well, I think our time has come to an end, Mark, and we certainly appreciate every one of you for your participation, and we wish you the very best. We know that our desire are to serve those students and to serve them well. And if we can find another tool to put in our arsenal for success, and if this is one of them for you, I hope that you're able to find ways to do it and share with your colleagues. So God bless, and thank you for attending.
And thank you guys. We appreciate you being willing to share your experience and your research. And thank you for everyone who has attended. We want to continue the conversation with our own colleagues and institutions, and as part of this teaching and learning community through CAHEA, this gives us a great chance to be connected with people and learn from one another. So thank you guys for being willing to present today. I did want to say something to Tiffany because I got kicked out of the Zoom meeting briefly. My computer decided to shut down, but when I got back into the Zoom, the only thing I could see was the earlier part of the chat was gone. So you were right. If you leave and come back, or if you come in later, you will not see what it was previously in the Zoom in the chat.
Yeah, it happened to me, and an unfortunate. I shared with my team so many documents. I thought I was, really ready, over prepared, shared all these materials before they got there. They showed up. No one ever said anything because they didn't know that they were supposed to be looking at all of these things. So you can't share documents until your guests are there. It's
good tip.
How would you know? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, thanks for mentioning that. As a very, very last thing, and just kind of off the cuff, this course, the online course that we made available for all of our faculty on Synchronicity, we are working right now on taking all of our training courses for faculty and making them public facing and available to other institutions. So if that's anything you have interest in, I could make that one go to the top of the list. That's something I've been tasked with, is making the trainings available to other universities. So please reach out. It's just tiffany.snyder@indwes.edu, and I'll see what we can do.